Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to continue a series that I've been doing on endgame unique items and what makes them work, what makes them good. And today I wanted to talk specifically about Cold Iron Point. Now this is quite a bit more accessible of a unique item than Chevron's Wrappings, which was the previous entry in the series, or the Eternity Shroud, which is likely to be the next one. Cold Iron Point is a drop anywhere unique. And so I have to break the bad news to anyone that is a solo self-found player. Whilst this item is not hard to acquire in a trade league, this is not something that I would ever suggest building around in solo self-found unless you already have two of it. It's quite a bit more common than items like Chevron's Wrappings. It's been my experience that I tend to get maybe between 3 and 7 of them dropping for me in a given league. And that's why it tends to trade for about 30 chaos in a mature trade league. Obviously a bit more sometimes, a bit less at other times. But it's something that if you're a trade league player, you can definitely aspire to equipping 2 of these by the time your character is level 85. With just a little bit of trading and a little bit of consolidating your currency and saving up for it. So, it's one of the most simple unique items in the game in terms of its stats. 3 lines of text. 30% increased global critical strike chance, which is always nice. Deal no elemental damage. So that is a huge drawback. And that is very much transformative of the way that you might build a character around this item. And then, of course, the reason you're using it. Plus 3 to the level of all physical spell skill gems. Now, a gem is a physical spell skill if it has the appropriate 2 lines that you see here. Notice that Void Sphere, and I'm just using Void Sphere as an example because it's a physical spell that my character happens to use because it's an amazing utility skill. You'll notice that the very first line of text underneath the name Void Sphere has a number of different tags. Spell, AoE, duration, physical, and chaos. And the important thing here is that Void Sphere is both a spell skill, so it has the spell tag, and it's a physical skill because it has the physical tag. And so anything that meets both of those criteria will get buffed by Cold Iron Point. Now, adding 3 to the level of all spell skill gems, of all physical spell skill gems, will affect certain skills more than others. For example, to take a physical spell that gains almost no benefit from Cold Iron Point, I'll point your attention to Blood Rage. Blood Rage is a combat buff that's used by a lot of attack-based characters, and quite simply, Cold Iron Point does absolutely nothing for Blood Rage. It increases the duration slightly, but ultimately, if you're using Blood Rage, you want a real weapon. On the flip side, Cold Iron Point excels on a number of skills. So let's go through everything here. So plus 3 to the level of physical spells is a huge boost to physical spells in general, not to every single one of them, and typically adds about 30 to 35% more DPS. And remember, you're going to be using 2 of them, so stacking 2 35% more multipliers, that is a big increase in damage. That puts you to about a 78% more multiplier overall, because they stack multiplicatively with each other. That's when you're leveling. But once your gems cap out at level 20 or you get corrupted level 21 gems, it's a little bit less of a buff. And for most skills, this does vary, but for most skills it tends to be about a 8% per level increase. And so you'll end up with a slightly more than 50% more multiplier overall from dual wielding Cold Iron Points, from getting plus 6 to the level of all of your physical spell skill gems. And you're always going to dual wield these. So, this boosts physical spells that don't scale through conversion. However, it's worth pointing out that a lot of physical spell skill gems, like this Penance brand that you see here, scale pretty much through exclusively through conversion. So you have a look at the Divergent Penance brand that I'm using here. You'll notice that it has the text 50% of physical damage converted to lightning damage. So essentially with Cold Iron Point, that 50% damage is just immediately thrown down the toilet. So for that reason, don't use Cold Iron Point with skills like Divine Ire, Glacial Cascade, Holy Flame Totem, or Penance brand. You need to use them with skills that are purely physical, or with skills that are chaos, that scale by converting physical damage into chaos damage directly, without intermediate steps of elemental damage. Now, in theory, you could use Cold Iron Point in conjunction with Brutality Support. And Brutality Support, if you're not that familiar with the gem, I'll quickly bring it up here. So it'll be on page 2. Brutality Support is a skill gem that gives a massive more multiplier to physical damage, 60% more damage at gem level 21. And this is something that removes your ability to deal chaos damage and elemental damage with that skill. That's something you could consider with Cold Iron Point, but it's not a popular setup for the skill. What is popular is using it in three different ways. The first one, the least powerful and the least common, is using it to scale up Herald of Agony's Agony Crawler, which has a huge breakpoint at gem level 31. Now you can get to gem level 31 with Herald of Agony by putting the Herald of Agony gem into a helmet that has +3 to the level of socketed minion gems, using 2 copies of Cold Iron Point, and then using any other external source of +2 to the level of the Agony Crawler gem. The Herald of Agony. That can be done with an Empower support or a bunch of other different ways. That little minion that's summoned by Herald of Agony is an absolute wrecking ball, albeit a wrecking ball that has pretty bad clear speed. This was a top tier build until about patch 3.7 or 3.8, after which it sort of fell behind a power creep from other sources. Secondly, and closely related, Cold Iron Point is used on a lot of builds to scale Carrion Golem. Carrion Golem in particular, Stone Golem to a lesser extent, those little boys do a lot of damage, and they'll do a lot more when they've got additional gem levels. But thirdly, and much more often, it's used as a way to scale skills like Blade Vortex, Blade Blast, Ethereal Knives, and Blade Fall, especially when your goal is to maximize single target damage. At the time of making this video, Ethereal Knives is the weakest of those skills, and it sees little play, but the others are all really good. Ultimately, Cold Iron Point is an example of a unique that is really hard to beat in its niche on pure power. You can beat it in many builds with truly extraordinary rares, and I will point out a couple of not quite merit tier rares that exist in the Heist League. I'll give you a sense of what a better than Cold Iron Point rare item looks like. So have a look at this Bloodthirst Opal Wand here. You'll notice that it's got 3 critical mods. +1 to the level of all spell skill gems, +1 to the level of all physical spell skill gems, these 2 stacks, so it's +2, and then 7% increased damage per power charge. So on a build that has 8 power charges, this is going to be 56% increased increased damage, universal damage. That's universal damage, which means that it scales a number of things like physical explodey chest explosions. In short, this is a really, really potent combination of mods. And additionally, because this is being crafted with chieftains that use fire conversion in mind, it also has 51% increased fire damage and 28% global crit multi. And you can see here that this is an expensive wand that the owner was asking 30 exalts for. It doesn't look like they've sold it, but it also looks like they haven't really been trying to, given that it's been at the same price for 3 months. And then there's this Dusk Call Imbued Wand, which is essentially an identical item, and the owner's asking 80 exalts, which is probably more than it's worth. But still, it gives you an example of how you can beat Cold Iron Point at the extreme top end with a crafted rare. It's not something like Chevron's Wrappings that there's no substitute for, but ultimately, Cold Iron Point is going to be better than anything you're going to find under about 15 to 20 exalts. And that's a lot that comes out of a little dagger that is usually only about 30 chaos in a trade league. Anyways, going to leave my discussion of Cold Iron Point there. Some of the other videos I'm intending to put out in this series are going to look at Call of the Brotherhood and Farrell's Fur, Replica Farrell's Fur, which will be in the same video as each other. Some people may ask why I didn't cover Replica Cold Iron Point in this, and that's because even though it's superficially very similar to Cold Iron Point, fundamentally they're so different that I would consider them different items. That's all I got though. Comments and questions fire away below. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one.